Hi, I'm going to show you how to make this silk ribbon embroidery sweet pea bunch. So the first thing I'm going to do is use a pair of hair straighteners. These are just some mini straighteners on some 13mm pure silk ribbon from craftyattic.com. You should do this with every ribbon when you get it. And I've got an air erasable pen and I'm just going to draw a kind of pear shape with the point at the bottom. So I've threaded my ribbon onto a chenille needle and I'm just bringing it up through my fabric. And now I've got just an ordinary sewing needle and some ordinary thread. I've put a knot in one end of the thread. I'm just bringing it up through the fabric, and now I'm going to do about 10 centimeters of gathering stitches on this piece of ribbon. So just very carefully gathering right on one edge of this ribbon. So you can see there I've got about 9 centimeters, something like that. So now I'm just going to gather up this bit of ribbon so that it's about the right length to go around the pear shape that I drew earlier. So now I'm just going to very lightly pin this bit of ribbon down, just even out the gather so it's about evenly gathered all the way around. So just a couple of pins there, and I'm going to use the gathering thread just to stab stitch through to secure the gathered edge to the fabric. So this is just going to anchor this this gathered ribbon to the backing fabric. If you want to work on an open weave embroidery linen, your life will be much easier. I'm doing this on a patchwork piece. It's a project that I'm working on, so you can obviously do it on this type of stuff. You can do silk ribbon embroidery on anything, but you might just have to tug it quite hard to get it through your fabrics if you're going to use a few layers like I have here. So I've just stab stitched that down now, and I'm now going to pass the 13mm silk ribbon back through the fabrics. So there, that's my first petal at the back complete. I'm now going to bring the ribbon up through the fabric again towards the bottom of the flower and to the left. I'm just going to do a ribbon stitch. I'm going to put the needle through the extreme right hand of the ribbon, pull the ribbon back down through itself. I may need to use a pair of pliers here, so I'm pulling through several layers of fabric. I've got another needle now, and I'm just going to allow the ribbon to curl around it as I pull to get a nice curl on the edge of the petal. So I'm going to do the same again for the right hand side. This time I'm going through the extreme left hand side of the ribbon, and I'm going through where the same place I went through with the other petals, so that they meet together at the top. Again, using my needle to get the ribbon curling in the way I want it to. So there, I've got those two now. So only one petal to go on this sweet pea head now. So I'm going to bring the ribbon up through the centre of the flower. And I'm going to do a reverse ribbon stitch. So I twist the ribbon, pass the ribbon back down through the centre of itself, allow the ends to curl over, and then turn it. So now I can just arrange these little petals to look how I want them to, open them up and have that last petal laying underneath the other two. So I've got two pens here, an ivory and a pale pink. These are permanent marker pens, and I'm just going to now colour the silk to look nice and delicate and how I wish it to. So I'm using an ivory and then a pale pink on the bottom of that petal. Those two colours will then blend together. I'm using the same pale pink on the bottom of the right and the left hand petals there. And you just need to touch the pen to the silk. The silk will draw the pigment that it wants. I've now got a blossom coloured pen and just touching that towards the top of those petals, and you can see how I'm getting a beautifully subtle effect and some very nice graduated colours on these petals by just allowing these pens to work with the silk and blend together. You don't need to worry about these pens bleeding out into anything else, they're quite well behaved. So I've got now a bluebell colour, and I'm just going to touch the very tips of that, the top petal there, to give me my beautifully subtle watercolour effect. So my flower head is finished. I'm now going to do a stalk. I've got some 4mm pure white silk embroidery ribbon. I'm just bringing it up through my fabric and twisting until it forms a nice cylindrical stalk for me, and then pass it back down through the fabric again. You must always use pure silk ribbons when you do this, because nothing else will fold small enough for you to be able to pass it through the fabric. So I'm just going to use a normal sewing thread now just to couch the stalk down to attach it to my backing fabric firmly. So the couching's finished. I've got another couple of pens here, just two different shades of green, a lightish green and a darkish green. I'm just touching it to the stalk and allowing the silk to suck the pigment that it wants. And I'm just going to use the darker pen just to touch in a few places to give a more realistic and varied result. So I've got the 13mm thread back through now, excuse me, I've got a bit of a dodgy throat. And I'm going to do a reverse ribbon stitch. So I've twisted the ribbon, I've passed the ribbon back down through itself, turned it into a little point at the end, and just then turned it over so that it's a nice puff that disappears back into the fabric into a point. I'm bringing the 13mm thread back up through again, and I'm just going to pass the needle back through the bottom edge of that ribbon there, trying not to get it through a bead that's underneath. And I'm going to use the long needle here just to make the ribbon curl the way I wish it to for my little opening bloom here. So I've got the pale pink and the ivory pens again. I'm just going to do the same with the bottom petal, so ivory at the top and pale pink towards the bottom, and then pale pink at the bottom of the top petal, and then just touch with the lilac along that edge just to give a nice effect. And I've got some lilac there. So that's my little opening bud done. So I've got the 4mm silk ribbon back again. I'm just passing it through the fabric at the base, and I want to bring it up into a nice bendy shape at the top. So I'm just going to very lightly pin it down with a couple of pins while I couch with my normal thread, and I couch from the bottom up so that I can get the bend exactly how I want it to. So there, that's all couched now. I'm just going to pass this 4mm twisted ribbon back through the fabric at the base of my little bud, and then just finish the last couple of couching stitches. to hold it firmly in place. So now I'm going to work on some little leaves, a kind of bud casing bits. Because this has been twisted, I'm just going to use my mini straighteners to straighten it out and make it nice and flat and glossy again so that I can work with it. I'm going to do a ribbon stitch, so I'm passing the ribbon down through the centre of itself and just allowing the ends to turn into a nice little point. So another ribbon stitch, you pass the needle back down through the centre of the ribbon and pull and just allow the ends to curl into a point. So you want to make sure you don't pull too hard, or that point will disappear through your fabric and you'll lose the beautiful effect. So I'm going to do 4 of these little stitches here. The silk ribbon embroidery is beautifully quick and it's so easy to do, and it looks so fabulous when it's finished. It looks like you've spent an absolute age on it, and it makes you look like you're really clever, and in fact it's so simple. So I've done my 4 little stitches there now and my stalk, so I'm going to colour the stalk in exactly the same way as I did the previous stalk. And I'm just doing the lighter green towards the centre of that little bunch of leaves and the darker green on the tip of each leaf, and just allowing the ribbons there to blend the colours for me. So that's that. Now I'm going to do a little pea pod. So I've got some 7mm pure silk white embroidery ribbon, and I'm just bringing that up through the fabric. And I'm just doing a standard ribbon stitch, so passing the ribbon back down through the centre of itself and allowing the ends to curl over into a point. So I've got some nice little pea-sized beads here. This was actually a necklace I bought in a charity shop and cut up for all the beads. I find that's a fantastic way of finding beads and sourcing bits and pieces for your projects, because you'll find a much wider variety of beads on old necklaces than you can buy in a craft shop. They all tend to be fairly the same. So these are actually little stone beads that I found, and I'm just going to use these now as little peas. If you don't have any beads the right size or colour, you can always use a 4mm white silk embroidery ribbon and do little French knots. That would work just as well. But these looked very pea-like and I thought I would use them. So I'm just going to sew 4 or 5 of them in here. My pea pod. And I'm just going to use my green pen just to colour this ribbon in before I lay something else over the top of it. So while I can get to it, I want to dye it the right colour. So I'm going to bring this 7mm thread back up through the fabric. So starting in more or less the same place that I started the last one. I'm going to lay it down over the top there. I'm going to do a reverse ribbon stitch, so I twist it, pass the ribbon back down through the centre of itself, allow it to pull into a point very gently, and then just turn it. And you can see there now that I've made a nice little pea pod shape, and I can fiddle about with this ribbon on the bottom and get it to look exactly how I want to. I've got a little pair of tweezers there. I'm just going to fiddle about a bit until it looks right. I want my peas just poking out of the top there. So I've got just my standard sewing thread. I'm just going to do a few tiny little stab stitches at the bottom of that ribbon to hold it in the right position and stop it from being damaged. So I'm just now going to colour this pea pod. So I'm using the light green at the top of this ribbon, at the top edge, and using the dark green at the bottom edge. And I'll just allow these colours to blend together. So there's my little pea pod finished. I now want to do some little pod casing, leaf casing things. So again, in exactly the same way as we did for the little opening buds, I'm just going to do some standard ribbon stitches coming out from the ends of the pea pod. There. Now I'm going to do a little stalk. So I'm going to bring the 4mm through the fabric and just twist it again, and I'm just going to pass it back down through the fabric and then couch it again with my normal white thread. So I've just got to colour this the stalk and these little leaves now. So again, I'm doing the light colour in the centre of the leaves. I'm doing the darker green on the tips of the leaves, and I'll just dot that down the stalk a bit as well. And there we go. So I'm just going to do some leaves for these flowers now, and I've got the 13mm thread back on the needle. And I'm just going to do a straightforward ribbon stitch, I think. So just pass the needle back down through the centre of the ribbon, pull very gently and allow it to fold into a point. So I'm just going to do 3 of these little leaves, dot them about. I scavenge a lot in charity shops. The little piece of lace you can see that's purple and blue that I'm sewing over, that's a bit of a tablecloth I bought in a charity shop, and it's been brilliant because it's had all sorts of different lacy bits on it, and I've just cut them off and dyed them the right colour with my Pro marker. So I'm just going to colour these leaves now exactly the same way that I've done everything else. So the lighter green towards the stalk end of the leaf and the darker green at the other end. And that's it, my sweet peas are nearly finished now. So that's it. All of the ribbons I've used here in this demonstration are available from craftyattic.com. We've got different size bundles. Some are very inexpensive, get you going so that you can have a go if you haven't done it before. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you have a go because it's really lovely and it's great fun. And thank you very much for watching this video.